access. My name is Shahid Javed, and I'm with the HughesON marketing team, and I'll be your host and moderator today for this presentation. Before we get started, let me quickly go over some housekeeping rules. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be available for on-demand viewing on our website. Also, if you notice and you scroll on top of your screen, there is a chat box. Feel free to chat with us during the presentation. And also, if you have any questions, you may send those to us through this chat box. And we'll address those questions at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session. If you run out of time, or you may be viewing this recording on demand, please feel free to send us your questions via email or simply filling out a form on the website. Before we get started, I wanted to share some important information about our annual Hug event. That's the annual Hughes User Group event, and invite everyone to save the date and mark your calendars for the 2020 Hug event, which is happening in Charleston, South Carolina on April 19th through April 22nd. Well, let's get started with the webinar. Today's presentation will be given by Charlie Hatfield. Let me tell you a bit about Charlie. Charlie is a veteran at Hughes with over 20 years of experience providing world-class service and delivery to our customers. Charlie and his team have life cycle ownership for enterprise services, including the launch of new services and relationship management of third-party services and third-party service delivery partners, including telcos and cable providers. Well, I don't want to hold you up, so Charlie, I'll pass on the mic to you.
Very good. Thanks so much. Well, for those of you that have attended Hug in the past, I'm a regular there. I'm definitely always around and often do breakout sessions on some of the subjects we'll be discussing today. And, of course, I'm always available for any follow-on questions that you may have. Also, I've asked a couple of members of my team to listen into today's session, Ms. Diana Cole, who is the director of our wireline services, and Heiko Maywald, who is responsible for our wireless services, are also on and available in case we have any questions of some detail for them. So I'll start speaking on slide number 4, which is entitled The Changing Terrestrial Landscape. This is our empirical data about the kinds of services that we have been provisioning on behalf of our customers over the last year and a half or so. You can see the pie chart on the left is what we accomplished last year, and then the pie chart on the right for comparative purposes is our year-to-date progress for the provisioning of circuits. And then you can see it's color-coded, and there continues to be a shift towards cable services in demand by our customers. Last year, it accounted for just about less than 50% of the circuits provisioned, and this year we're running at a rate that's closer to about 2/3 of the circuits provisioned. So you can see a continued growth. Just 4 or 5 years ago, we were probably delivering maybe 20% of our circuits in cable form, and now it's become the dominant segment. We still do a healthy bit of fiber, so it was 24% last year, and it's running about 20% this year. And really the last observation on this slide is to see that DSL services continue to decline. In some cases because the throughputs available on copper services are limited, and of course there is no continued build out of services, and indeed there's some reduction in the availability of copper-based services as the telcos are moving through the life cycle on that, and it's definitely sort of on its way out. We continue to have a rather large base of DSL installed, but of course we're acquiring less and less of it for our customers. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. This chart has two graphs on it. On the left, this line chart gives you a sense of the average throughput that we have been provisioning on behalf of our customers in the download direction. So we have almost 10 years worth of history here, and you can see that it was fairly flat early on in the 3, 4, 5 megabits per second range. And just in the last few years, of course, the line has gotten much steeper as the bandwidth available for the kind of circuits we're purchasing has grown substantially. So we think by the end of this year, on average, we'll be provisioning 50 megabits per second download for all the circuits that we purchase on behalf of our customers. And looking ahead, we think that that's going to continue to grow at a very high clip. Most of it driven by cable services and their growth there, but there's also some comparable telco services as well that I'll speak about. On the right-hand side, this gives you a better sense of the distribution there. So this is taking that 50 megabits per second and sort of breaking it into chunks. And so about a quarter of them are still less than 10 megabits per second, and those are probably mostly the DSL circuits. Then there's a healthy amount in that intermediate section of 25 to 49 megabits per second, and then rounding out the last quarter is over 100 megabits per second and even beyond. And so, we think that, to the extent that customers are interested in these higher bandwidth circuits, we do have it available at 200 megabits and above. Next slide, please. So this, to a certain extent, summarizes some of the things I've just said over the last few minutes. And so the entry-level point for most cable companies, and we work with all of the major cable companies, there's about 6 or 7 that we have direct relationships with that constitute, probably 80 to 90% of businesses passed. And then we get access to the hundreds of smaller Tier 2 and Tier 3 cable companies that are regional-based through some of our aggregator partners. So the big guys are in this range of 50 to 100 megabits per second with their entry-level offering, and then they scale up from there to gigabit plus. And we do have those product offerings in our portfolio and can be made available to you if you're interested from a customer perspective. If you want to talk to your account team, your program manager, and your account representative about that, we can tell you more about it. For the higher speeds approaching 1 gigabit, typically we would require a truck roll and an upgrade to your modem, and we want to check a couple of other things out just to make sure that all of the elements of our implementation on your behalf are able to support those kind of speeds, but we would certainly be pleased to have that discussion. I did mention that telcos are doing their best to stay competitive with like services, typically fiber-based. There are some VDSL services from some of our partners that also offer higher speed offerings. And, of course, Ethernet, it is a good option as well. It is a little bit higher cost, and it does come with sort of enterprise-grade SLAs if that's needed for your business. So our last observation on this chart is just to remind everybody that while cable is a great option, there's a bit of an investment up front to arrange for cable in approximately half the time. It's going to need some bit of construction or extension effort to bring it to your location, and the times for that kind of work can vary anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to 6 months, and so we want to just stay tight with your schedules to make sure that we can stay ahead of your rollouts and whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so, if there is time in the schedule to accommodate these cable intervals, that's great. If not, we would talk to you about some alternatives that might be able to be delivered more quickly. Moving on to the next chart. This is a nice reference chart about the amount of time that you as a customer would need to invest to help Hughes deliver different services. Of course, Hughes always has the lead in managing our partners and advising you through the process, but some of these services actually require greater engagement from your perspective. So working my way down through the chart, of course, there's some technologies that are very easy to do serviceability analysis and to install in your locations, wireless and DSL and T1. Of course, these telco products and wireless products are all fairly straightforward. Of course, we need to know where to install them, but that's about all we really need to do beyond your order approval, and we can take it from there. And then moving on to fiber, and there's different forms of fiber. Typically we're delivering what we call IP broadband from AT&T or FTTI from Verizon, and that may need a little bit more input from you in terms of these documents like the LOA and if there is any build out, some construction approval. It's still fairly straightforward, and then we move into what we call the higher engagement classes like cable and so forth. And cable, because it's so popular now with our customers, as I mentioned, about 2/3 of the circuits being ordered are cable. We do this day in and day out, but because cable companies, unlike the telco, they don't have a pre-existing relationship necessarily with you, which is what one of the things that gives a telco a sort of ready access to your locations. A cable company needs to make sure that you are protected as a potential customer, and to a certain extent that they are protected, and also that we've communicated to them, exactly what they need to do. And so there's this series of things that we will guide you through that need to be completed. The right of entry and an access letter that would probably be provided to the technician who's going to show up on site. And of course, there'll be potentially a series of technicians that may need to do that, but that'll help the local management of the location understand who they are and why they're there, and that they have permission. And they'll do an estimate of the work that needs to be done, and they'll end up with a statement of work which needs to be approved, and so forth. So again, it's not intended to dissuade you from thinking about cable. We've installed, 15 or 20,000 cable locations at this point, so we've done it many, many times, and we know how to do it best, but it's good to set expectations that will require a little bit more of your time and energy on this one. Ethernet is similar in terms of some approvals. It's not quite as intensive as cable, but it's we judge it to be high. And then fixed wireless, which is a fairly new technology that we've been using. It's a line of sight microwave technology. It's in some respects very similar to VSAT in that eventually we will need to have an antenna installed on the facility, outside or on the roof. And if you happen to be mall-based, for example, getting roof right access is sometimes a bit challenging. And again, our partners will do much of the work, but we might on occasion need your influence on the mall management team, for example, to give rights to get that access. All right, moving on to the next chart. So a little bit of summary here. So, really we haven't gotten any of our telco providers to say that DSL is no longer going to be supported in the future. We highly suspect that those announcements will come, in the next year or two, and we've seen some sort of preliminary announcements from AT&T, for example, which they withdrew at some point, but, the writing is definitely on the wall. I mean, I'm not concerned that it's going to be gone, say, in the next 3 years. I have to believe that it's sort of a 5-year plus kind of time frame, but we do keep a close eye on it. And if we have a new engagement with you, or you're doing a refresh of technology, chances are we would steer you away from DSL and probably point you to a newer technology that we know has a much longer timeline. That said, we still have over 10,000 DSL circuits that we're supporting, and it's still a reasonably high-quality service. I mean, we do see a little bit more variability in terms of service performance and service quality, because of its nature being a copper-based service, but also, to be truthful, the telcos are investing a little bit less in support of these services than they might be on their newer services, and so in some respect, we know that their capabilities are reduced as well, and so we have to be careful there. The telcos are looking ahead, though, to how they can compete with cable, and so I mentioned the IP broadband, which is fiber to the curb for AT&T. It does provide, moderately high throughputs in the range of, say, 25 or 50 megabits per second down. It is asymmetric, so typically we're getting something like 5 or 10 megabits on the upload side, which is typically acceptable for most applications. So we think that's an excellent option. The Verizon equivalent is FTTI, which is really the business version of the data portion of Fios. And of course, Fios is really a residential service targeted at, for home use. And so the FTTI unbundled the data portion and packaged it in a way that's much more useful and cost-effective for business, and so that's really the way to go in the Verizon territory. And of course, in this case, this is fiber, typically all the way to the premise, not to the curb like IP broadband. VDSL and Ethernet I've mentioned earlier as good options that are available, and those are typically returned to you if you were to ask for a pre-qual analysis of your locations. You should see those as options. We do get reports on a pretty regular basis from our telco partners that they've had to renovate either a site or in some cases even a CO, sometimes associated with unfortunate events, that are out of their control, usually weather-related events, where if they have to essentially rewire a site or a CO, they will very unlikely reuse copper, but they'll go ahead and take that as an opportunity to put in fiber. This is generally good news. I mean, fiber is a much better technology. It may require us to make some adjustments at your site. If we see this coming, we certainly give you notice and we arrange to do that in advance. If it's in association with more of a disaster kind of thing, then obviously we're scrambling, and so is our partners to get services in there. And of course, if we have to go with a temporary service in wireless form before we can get access to that fiber, we're happy to do that. And of course, the last point being that we know in the outer reaches of the telco footprint, they're likely not to be able to stretch their fiber out that far because it won't be cost-effective for them. And so in that case, it'll stay on copper until there's probably going to be a wireless replacement of some sort, and it might be 5G, it might be something else, but we're always talking to our partners to understand what's available and then communicating that to you, our customers. Next slide, please. One thing we've done for mall-based customers, we found that doing a standard serviceability analysis using our regular pre-qual tools weren't always as accurate as we wanted them to be in malls. And in fact, it turns out the best way to do it is to, keep track of where we've been successful in provisioning services in a particular mall, and literally, have that information set aside for that mall. And then we actually invested in a third-party database of services available at U.S. and Canadian malls as a sort of a second view of the same set of data. And we've done it certainly for all the large malls, so you can see that over 4,800 malls are in our database now. And so we when we do a pre-qual now also, when we know we're working with a mall-based customer or even a customer that may have some locations in a mall, we bump it against this database and come back with what we think is probably a highly accurate information. And one reason this is important is it's not unusual for representatives of mall management to suggest that the services that are available in their mall are limited to maybe one provider that's made certain financial arrangements to sort of gain the right to be the provider of choice from the mall management perspective. But we may or may not want to work with that provider. For example, you may not be interested in working with them because a lot of times they're a little bit higher cost fiber-based providers, and so to keep them honest, we're able to say, well, wait a minute, we have 3 AT&T DSL circuits, or we have 5 Comcast cable circuits installed in this mall, and so we don't accept that this other fiber guy is the only one available, and we quickly pretty much win the day with that, and what that does is, of course, expand the options for you as a mall-based customer to truly know what your options are, and then you can choose wisely based on our advice. So this is rather new. I mean, it's really come together more or less over the last 6 months or so, and we have applied it to a handful of customers already, and it is available and should be done on a standard basis for all mall-based organizations going forward. Moving ahead into the wireless section of our discussion today, this will be a kind of a quick overview, not just the new things going on, but a little bit of a repeat about some of our unique capabilities, just in case you weren't familiar with it and you're thinking about moving towards wireless services. The first slide just lays out the carriers we work with. We have a long-time relationship with Verizon Wireless and AT&T Wireless for many years, and they've been good partners. You can see from the pie chart that we've placed about 2/3 of our devices on the Verizon network and about 1/3 on the AT&T network. That's not really a commentary on the capabilities and quality of those networks. We consider them to be more or less equal. And there's certain reasons, both business and technical, that we ended up going in certain directions, but we have high confidence there. That said, we're excited about the addition of T-Mobile as our third carrier, and that will be completed in the next 30 to 60 days. So now we'll have 3 options. We do know that there are some parts of the country where T-Mobile has invested more in their facilities than Verizon or AT&T has chosen to do, and it kind of varies from city to city, and they have certain strengths. They certainly have a lot of strengths west of the Mississippi, but there's pockets where really T-Mobile is clearly the best provider. So that's one of the reasons that we're making it available, and so we'll have a fairly good means by which we can decide which of the carriers we should default to in certain territories, based on our experience in installing services in the past. So it's great to have them. They also are growing in their capabilities as a supplier to businesses. Of course, they became famous as a supplier to consumer, but they've really had a big focus over the last few years on modifying processes in their systems to be supportive of enterprise business, and we're fairly impressed by what we see. And so I think you'll hear us talking more and more about T-Mobile for those customers that are engaged with us on the wireless side. We do have services in Mexico. If you have locations there, AT&T has owned assets in Mexico, and it's very easy for us to gain access to those, and they're at very competitive prices. In fact, they're the same rates that we receive in the United States, and the provisioning and support processes are high quality. So we're happy with that. We have a couple of partners in Canada, but our preferred partner is TELUS, as is listed there. So there's good coverage in Canada, and of course, I've already talked a little bit about T-Mobile. So moving on to the next slide, again, a little bit more focus on T-Mobile. In addition to our, we've had maybe 30 or plus locations running on the T-Mobile network for as long as 6 months now, just to get some experience and to ensure that we think that the service is good, and that is exactly what our experience has been. That we've, in some cases, put them in some of the hardest to reach locations just to see what would happen and how well they did, and we've been pleasantly surprised by all of that effort. In addition to our experience, though, a number of third parties that evaluate wireless services have also been ranking T-Mobile very highly, indeed, in front of AT&T and essentially neck and neck with Verizon. So we think now that the quality of their network is comparable to the other big guys, and they're also a good, easy organization to work with, and so we think that we're going to have a real success with them. Moving on to the next slide. So this is something that I think is quite unique to Hughes. I mean, some aspects of this will be available from some of our competitors, but not all of it. And this is really about how we're able to pool devices in different ways to bring this power of pooling, which essentially allows you to spread the data that you're effectively purchasing in your rate plans across all of the locations. And originally when pooling was invented, it was really the same rate plan for the same provider. So, for example, if you had purchased a 1 gigabyte plan for Verizon, then all of those devices would be pooled. But if you had multiple plans, those could not be pooled. And certainly, if you have plans that are across providers, which is very common in our world, because we're trying to choose the best provider in every location, well, there's really no way, of course, to pool those. And so this has evolved really in the best way possible. And so what Hughes does is we absolutely will now pool across carriers, so you don't have to worry that maybe half of your network ends up on Verizon and a quarter on T-Mobile and a quarter on AT&T. We will go ahead and pool all of those together, and of course we provide reporting in detail so you can see all of that. So that is very unique, I think, to the industry. And the other thing that we do is that we pool across plans. And so we know that you have need perhaps for different plan types. For example, you may have some primary wireless and some backup locations, and obviously they will not be on the same rate plan. They don't need to be. And so, for example, what we see here on this chart suggests that maybe the primary guys will have a 10 gigabyte plan and the backup guys will have a 250 megabyte plan. And what we'll do is pool all of the data between all of the locations. So, for example, if you have some overage in a month on your backup sites and you've underutilized the 10 gigabyte plan on the primary, which is not an unusual situation, we would take the overage from the backup sites and essentially apply it to the underage on the primary, and your usage bill for that month would be $0 because of that. And so we think that this is the way that's, of course, most efficient, and also results in what is likely to be no surprises on the usage side, which is, of course, to be avoided. We don't want you to get bills unexpectedly, and we do a real good job of again reporting usage and giving you a heads up about how you're doing over the course of the month, so you can see what's going on. Moving on. On the supported devices for wireless, we continue to have a pretty robust portfolio. Originally, we worked with Cradlepoint, and we still are very happy to have them as a partner, and they're a strong manufacturer in the wireless space. You can see the different devices we've used with them over time, the 750 and the IBR 350 and the 850 as well. But we're pleased to say that we have all alternatives as well. We have a device from our security partner, Fortinet, the 30E, that we've been offering for a few years now. We're actually right in the middle of an upgrade to the next generation of the 30E device, the GBL, and that should be available to you in the next 30 to 60 days. And so this device actually bundles not just LTE services, but also has security services and has router functionality. So it's a little bit more than an LTE device. It's sort of an all-in-one box. And then finally, Hughes has a long history, of course, of innovation in the VSAT space, and the HT2000L released last year is our first effort to combine VSAT and LTE technology in one device. So this is a Hughes design and manufactured box that gain services on the VSAT side through our high throughput service that we offer to our enterprise customers on our Jupiter satellites, and then has LTE capability on any of the providers that we typically work with. We're also working on our next generation of device. So if we move on to the next slide. And there's actually a few that are in process. The next generation of cradle point device, the 550, is available to us, and we'll begin working on that. It's very similar in capability to the previous devices, the 350 and the 850. Further improvements have been made in terms of cost efficiencies on it, et cetera. So I think it's a good option going forward for kind of an entry-level wireless device. Cradlepoint has a large suite of products that they offer, and we're going to get some experience with devices that are really branch routers. So they definitely have LTE, which is one of the strengths, but it also offers some of the capabilities for routing and security that we'd get in a one device kind of suits all environment. And finally, I mentioned the next generation of the Hughes device that we are calling the HT2100L, and it takes that VSAT plus LTE combination and adds really our SD-WAN capabilities, that we call our active tech. And so, all of these things in one fairly low-cost device, and that additional technology from Hughes will allow us then to smartly, utilize both connections, the LTE and the VSAT, and so we can steer traffic smartly down one path or the other, depending on your application needs and other things that we would discuss with you in terms of deploying this one device to kind of meet both, it provides, low latency services over the LTE connection, and also allows for very efficient movement of bulk data over the satellite. Finally, on the LTE side, we keep a close eye out on 5G. We're constantly meeting with our partners. We were just up at the Innovation Center with Verizon in Waltham, Mass. About 10 days ago to continue to get their story and their vision for where it's going. It's definitely very exciting. I mean, really 5G is being initially positioned as a replacement for a last mile wireline solution. So, instead of investing in some of those wireline options I was talking about at the beginning of my discussion, this has the potential to replace that at very high throughputs and at very low latency. So, there's no doubt that it's exciting. That said, it is, some time away. I mean, all of the guys are making different progress. In the case of Verizon, they've announced either 28 or 30 markets that they'll be building out over the next, 6 to 12 months. But the way it looks to us is that the technology itself needs to be deployed in really dense markets because of the cost and because of the nature of using millimeter wave technology. Really means that all of the towers really have to be pretty closely clustered together, and there has to be a substantial amount of backhaul throughput available to each tower, and so it certainly lends itself well to areas that are highly populated with many homes and businesses passed in small places, and becomes less and less cost effective the further out it goes. And so for our customers, we'll continue to report back where it's available and when it makes sense. We think for your locations, but it shouldn't really be viewed as a technology that will be broadly available to all of your locations, probably ever, but certainly not any time in the near future. That said, we always want to remind people that 4G has really been designed to go faster and faster, and the devices to support that are coming out. So this bar chart you can see on the right, these different classes of modems that in LTE parlance are category 4, 6, or 16, and that really indicates what kind of throughput is available from a theoretical perspective. And in the past we were typically making category 3 or category 4 modems available to our customers, but the newer devices that we're now launching this year are minimally category 6, and in the case of the 30E Fortinet device, it'll be a category 12 modem, which is capable of that 600 megabits per second, and then in the case of the Cradlepoint devices, some of them support category 18, which is 1.2 gigabits per second. So you can see that if your concern is speed and you need that to run your operation, these newer LTE modems will offer plenty of speed, and we can certainly talk to you about upgrading to those if that's of interest to you. So that, I believe, is the end of my scheduled content, and I think we're happy to take any questions.
Hey, Charlie, thank you. Thank you for an excellent presentation. You were talking about the LTE evolution in the last slide. So I'm going to take one question that came in from the audience. Is about, we're going up to category 11, 12, all the way to 16. What are Hughes' plans to support these high speeds, Cat 12 and up for LTE?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I started to touch on that just a little bit at the end. That's right. So as we're pretty much replacing our LTE devices every 2 or 3 years. Of course, the older devices are supported for a lengthy period of time. At least 5 years of life remains. Once we kind of designate something as end of sale. But these newer devices get introduced, and so in this case, I mentioned that we are now working on the Fortinet 30E GBL model, which should be available in the next month or two, and that contains a Category 12 modem, and so that's the one that goes, a little bit faster than 600 megabits per second. Likewise, we're working on a couple of these Cradlepoint devices, and these are in some cases modular in fashion, where you can slide a different modem in. If you have a newer modem you want to use, you just essentially remove the old modem and slide in the new modem. And so these devices like the AER 1600 provide that kind of functionality where you can slide in, say, a Category 18 modem, which will be available soon if it's not already, and that has the over a gigabit speed capability. So those will be in our portfolio, over the next few months.
Okay, that's excellent. So I'm going to take just one more question. This is actually a good one. When a wireline provider, they upgrade their minimum base speeds, do all the existing services automatically get updated, or there's another process that goes around it?
Yeah, that is a good question. It's one we talk about all the time internally because it is a little confusing. I mean, the great news is that, and I would say particularly in the world of cable, which obviously represents now a majority of the circuits that we provision, there is a bit of a competitive thing where the cable guys continue to push up the minimum supported speed, and so when we've originally purchased on behalf of a customer, the entry-level speed at the time may have been, say, 16 megabits per second or 25 megabits per second, and then a partner like a Comcast or a Spectrum decides that they're going to move the minimum speed up to 60 or 100 megabits per second. There is a process for all of our existing devices under management to be migrated to that higher speed. So it does happen, I'll say quote unquote automatically. Now, that said, Diana Cole in her role does work closely with our partners, and as well as possible, she demands from them good notice about, when that's going to happen. And it's not unusual for those kind of rollouts to be regional in nature. And so if possible, she'll get a schedule of that, on how they're going to do it market by market. And we do attempt to communicate that typically through our program office, even though we have been talking about other ways to do it. In fact, possibly even with webinars like this, if we can do it, once or twice a year, we might be able to produce a schedule just to give our customers a heads up about when that sort of thing is coming. So again, good news is it does typically happen automatically, and say again, please.
No, it was nothing. I think it was some kind of echo. Please go ahead.
Okay. Very good. So, and we do try to tell our customers, 99.8% of the time, there's no disruption to their services. I mean, the modem does have to typically be reset, not always, but they generally pick a pretty good time to do that. That's not disruptive to the business, and the modem will switch on and off in a minute or two, and when it comes back up, it'll be operating at those higher speeds. One thing that I think we're trying to get better at is updating Hughes business systems to reflect these higher speeds, so the customer can know that it's been done. And so, to the extent that they're looking at our customer portal, or maybe even their invoice, for example, I'd like to, them to see that instead of the 16:3 service they originally procured from us, they now are receiving, 60:10 or whatever it is, just so that we kind of close the loop with our customers, and they know that they're receiving this higher service, and of course, generally speaking, at no additional cost to them. So it's kind of a good news thing. Again, we're kind of still fine-tuning the process, but I guess at least everyone knows now that they do automatically receive these service upgrades.
Well, thank you. That was definitely something that our customers can use when they're looking at upgrades or changes to their networks. Thank you very much, Charlie. Folks, thank you for joining us. We are out of time. Please feel free to reach us out on our website. You can either fill out a form or call the toll-free number to get a hold of us, or if you have any questions, we can address those questions that you fill out a form, and we can answer your questions. With that, I would say thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day.